Hey everybody, my name is Bill Doerrfeld. As Travis mentioned, I'm the editor-in-chief for the Nordic APIs blog. So all the content that we've been pushing out there on the blog with the ebooks, I'm a part of that. It's been great. I've been working with writers internationally based to get some thought leadership around best practices for APIs. My talk is going to be an introduction to the conference. I want to explore the different 6 insights that we'll be covering throughout these 2 days. And a lot of it is inspired by Roy Fielding. His dissertation on RESTful API design has really impacted the entire space. He said that REST is software design on the scale of decades. Every detail is intended to promote software longevity and independent evolution. Many of the constraints are directly opposed to short-term efficiency. So using this as inspiration, I want us to look at, within these 2 days, what it means to build APIs that are going to last for decades. Why do that? Well, we've seen some pretty astounding evolution in the space, indicating that APIs are going to be around for quite some time. They're going to prevail. Coding just enough, it rarely stands the test of time. And doing so helps us focus on our entire system needs, allowing us to avoid inadaptability as technology evolves. The buzzy term agile shouldn't negate the fact that we need a plan for the future. All this really sounds like API practice is an art. It's a true art form. From trade guilds in ancient times to online tech communities, nowadays we've formed best practices around what we're good at, and we're trying to do that here at this conference. So with Nordic APIs content that I've been a part of, we've been dividing things into 6 different groups. One is platforms, the second, business modeling, third, strategy when it comes to providing your API. Next, design, which is focused on development and style. Then security and marketing. So I think you'll see echoes of these traits throughout the conference. So first off, what does it mean to be a platform? I'll get to that in a second. But it's kind of made of these 4 different terms, different subcategories. So some people might not be convinced that having an API strategy is good. You might need to convince upper-tier leadership, validate with successful model platforms, or attract the industry momentum. As Travis said earlier, an API platform is like that big API. It's when the API enables access to the organization's core value proposition. It's technically and non-technically scalable. It enables consumers to create shared value, instrumental in securing the organization's market as a position as a market leader, and it's seen by the entire company as something that is business critical. So why become API-ified? Well, it's a fact that it's strategic for most companies to provide one. It's creating businesses that are more specialized, more niched within their industry, and it's affecting all sectors, allowing entrepreneurs to create new user experiences, and there's really an entire economy that's formed around the API. You can look to some of these companies for validation into great API stories. Take Netflix's internal API that streamlines all their content distribution. Google Cloud Platform allowing Maps integrations into thousands of apps and other use cases. So we like to track the validation and the business cases for APIs at Nordic APIs. Looking at the industry at large, the programmable web directory estimates that there are about 16,000 public APIs, and that's not even considering the partner and private integrations that we don't see. It's really affecting the way business is done, creating more of a composable enterprise, perhaps you've heard that term, creating microservices that are impacting so many sectors. Adam Duvander once gave a talk on convincing the architect, and a big part of what it means to integrate API practice into your business is to convince your upper tier management and foster best practices throughout your business that not only embrace an API first mindset, but also adopt principles for securing those APIs and doing so with great style. So we've done platforms. We kind of understand the general reasons for why we want to provide an API. The next step is doing it strategically. And I feel like this is made out of determining your digital assets, what you could be used to provide with, carving out unique value with your service, provisioning, so deciding who sees what and what access you give them, and forecasting to look at the greater space. So say you want to provide an API, what sort of data you might be providing. There are 3 different types. Basically, you might be providing like user data or profile data, such as a financial data API, or you might be offering some sort of processing mechanism, so functionality, or you might be leveraging some internal processes that others could benefit from. Take GitHub's HuBot platform that has spawned an entire community around chat ops. Next, using that functionality as a baseline, determining how you can create unique value by niching your service in some form. There are over 500 SMS APIs in existence, but we only know Twilio, mainly. And I think that's because they have designed an awesome developer relations schematic, as well as really great design, not only within their API calls, but on the developer portal and resources that people use on a daily basis. Too many companies have gone straight to releasing a public API, and I think there's a greater reason to do so in different levels of access tiers. So starting with a private release, moving toward partner integrations, and perhaps a public release if that is critical for the business. Part of being strategic with your API is forecasting, engaging with the evolution, and looking at different industries that rely on APIs and how they might evolve. So we have a good strategy in place. The next part is to decide how we want to integrate this into our business. How are we going to monetize the API or integrate it into a package as an upsell for a premium sort of model? Or what other sort of indirect return on incomes could be made? So many companies offer a sort of premium tier, helping developers grow, such as Affectiva. They offer a free SDK and API for small businesses. I think that's really important so that you're helping your developer consumers grow with you. Offering a direct charge per call or subscription. That's one option, very obvious option. Another option is to package that as part of an upsell opportunity within a premium tier. Or other return on incomes. Let's not forget that Tweety was originally built by a third-party developer and was later acquired by Twitter. So that was consuming the API, part of their public developer program. So providing an API could act as a good source for R&D, creating new consumer experiences that you might want to purchase or leverage in the future somehow. Other more indirect return on incomes that aren't really directly related to dollars and cents could be advertising benefits, benefits from streamlining operations, affecting the supply chain management, other business intelligence, and more. I think it's great to, at the same time, when you're forecasting, analyze how the market is trending, how the open banking movement is regulating the process of APIs, how that's going to affect the economy. There are still many sectors for exploitation with APIs that have yet to be affected. The recent IPO by Twilio or the acquisition announcement by Apogee and Google, these are great indicators that the economy at large is seeing some significant momentum. Also creating a whole slew of novel companies that really solely rely on APIs as their main channel for business. So we have a good take on business. Next comes design. How are we going to create great style for our APIs that people want to consume and integrate great developer experiences practices? So at this conference, you'll probably see a lot of talk on RESTful API design. There's the debate between REST and SOAP. GraphQL recently has become embraced as a good framework for accessing APIs. And there are different data formats and style considerations that you need to consider, such as the number of endpoints you're offering, how you're doing filtering, pagination, your error handling, hypermedia, and others. A great resource is API Handyman's style book that aggregates a bunch of API design books from Cisco, Atlassian, PayPal, and others, I believe. So check that out. I'm going to have links throughout this slideshow later online. Next is working with third parties that are offering great tooling in the space. You're probably already doing this using Apiary, Apigee, API-Matic, or others to push your documentation or use it for server space management or more. There's three, as sort of an introductory to what's going on, there's three different types of API definitions out there: RAML, API Blueprint, Swagger, that's really been adopted by the Open API initiative. So these definitions are making it so that a machine can read the API and also a human can do so. But part of great API design is continuous testing. Testing the usage reports from your consumers, doing internal testing and monitoring, getting those analytics that you can funnel back into your development process to reiterate and improve the entire developer experience. So another quote from Roy Fielding here: "The effort required to design something is inversely proportional to the simplicity of the result." I think that's a great reminder that reminds us that all the work we do needs to be masked, and the end result of API design is something very simple. I'm going to leave security mainly to my friends at Tubo Technologies, because they're the experts on this, but having a great secure API is critical to good API practice. This means tracking your consumer identity, protecting your resources with great access management, knowing the common vulnerabilities out there and hacking methods and ways to protect your API from them. Also, performing debugging to prevent exploits or major system failures that could cause an insecure API. So I hope to really delve into this throughout the conference these 2 days. So the last insight is marketing. That's something that I'm really passionate about in this space. So there's the whole concept of discoverability with an API program. How are developers going to know about your service? What can you do with your developer portal to increase the readability of your documentation, providing great developer resources, code samples, and other things that people need? All of this is part of good developer relations and advocacy, which in turn helps promote the platform. So how does one go about finding an API? Well, it's probably just starting with Google search, honestly. So when I was working at Programmable Web, I ended up profiling about 500 different APIs, and I noticed that the ones that were successful had awesomely optimized API branding on their pages, looking at the copy for critical keyword frequencies, and also some of them separated, like if they're offering a suite of microservices, would separate them into separate homepages for each API. So there's a better chance for greater SEO performance. Other options are to list an API in the expanding network of different directories that have emerged. A really new, potentially disruptive idea is the concept of services discovery automation, which Ken Lane, the API evangelist, was really pushing for with the APIs.json format. I don't think it's really come to its fruition yet, but that could have a huge impact on how developers discover APIs. So let's say within the onboarding process, the developer has found your service. What do they need to go to the next step to become a consumer? Well, I think it's made of 7 main components. So having an awesome getting started guide, having a good authentication guide that explains what you need to log in, having awesome documentation that's not static. It's also paired with a testing console in the form of a playground or API sandbox, or perhaps a virtualized version of the API for better hands-on capabilities. In addition to offering those components, you should be having great developer resources, code samples in the programming languages that your consumers are likely to be using, SDKs, libraries, immediate support channels in the form of chat, email, forum management, and lastly, wrapping that in a nice platform policy. Have the legalese if you need to, the long number of pages, but at the end of the day, list the main top components that your developers need to know so that your platform policy is readable and you don't run into any negative developer relations dilemmas. Which brings us to advocacy. Developer outreach is critical as it increases awareness of your product, understanding, and creates a shared vision throughout your platform. Ways to do this, ways to form a community, perhaps through email, using chat, having great forum space capabilities, hosting conferences, attending conferences, but more so creating a knowledge base online and really offering helpful content is something that I think helps quite a bit. That could contain demos of the API functionality, or perhaps use cases that appeal to an entrepreneur who might not have a technical background, so that people can look at your API and realize what they could do, what they could use that to integrate with in their specific situations. So when that's all said and done, if you have everything published, everything online, it's all accessible, discoverable, you might still need to promote it. So how do you do so? Through press releases, yes, they should be good, but you can't always rely on them to really get people excited. Submitting to the API blogs and digests in the space that are sharing best practices, I think is great because it helps establish that you're part of the community, willing to talk on their level. And posting to social channels like Hacker News, Product Hunt, Betalist, Stackshare.io, and Reddit. I wrote a post on utilizing Product Hunt to launch an API service, which I think could be a cool option as it offers direct responses from a very niched group of people. So Tim Berners-Lee, founder of the World Wide Web at CERN, recently said that the web is now philosophical engineering. Physics and the web are both about the relationship between the small and the large. And I think this dichotomy of balancing small and large is something we need to consider when we design APIs that stand the test of time. A balanced release should not only consider the functional requirements, but should consider the emotional design, the usability of the product, and the reliability of a service. So releases need to be what's on the right, not on the left. So my final thought for this presentation is kind of a rework of Fielding's first quote. Building on the scale of decades must inherently consider all aspects of API practice, including things like developer relations and business acumen, as these are the sort of things that are going to inform your technical development. So I hope to kind of collate all the insights that we're going to achieve throughout this two-day conference. I'm really excited to hear what all the speakers have to say. I'm going to be assembling this into an ebook to release on Nordic APIs, The Art of API Practice, which will feature knowledge from the conference as well as contributed posts from speakers and our blog team, hopefully to be released early next year. Check out Nordic APIs online when you can. We're publishing blog pieces every week as well as ebooks 3 to 4 times a year on select categories like the different insights that I mentioned throughout my talk. And thanks. That's my presentation.
All right. I quickly ran off the stage before you jumped up here, so we have a couple of minutes to ask questions as the next presenter comes up and gets ready. Do we have some questions for Bill? Hope that set the stage and got you guys thinking about what is a platform and taking this long view and things like that. Do you have questions perhaps on how to apply that to your situation, or some of those insights or missing insights, or things that you might have read on the blog or that you'd like to share with the community? We have a few minutes here.
If not here, come to me sometime
Definitely.
Throughout the conference. I'd love to chat.
All right, well then, last chance. Great. All right, Bill, thanks again.
Thank you.